First is the um, not unexpected ruling out of California, where a judge ruled that Donald Trump grabbing a hold of the California National Guard, federalizing it, using it like his own little police force or military force was not lawful, and sending military members to the streets of Los Angeles was not lawful. These things violated a 140-year-old law called the Posse Comitatus Act, which boiled down to its essence says you can't use the military to enforce civilian law. You can't use the military to be glorified policemen out in the streets of America enforcing civilian laws. Can't do it. It's illegal. It's been illegal for 140 years. And after a trial on the merits, a judge, and I keep forgetting his name, and I shouldn't because he did the American people a solid, Judge Charles Breyer, ruled that Donald Trump is violating the law still because there are still 300 troops deployed in the streets of California. He ordered it to stop pronto, right now, forthwith. Um, and I love the Politico's headline, which quotes from one of the things Judge Breyer said in his opinion. Judge rules Trump can't act as national police chief. He can't. He cannot act as national police chief. Sport. So cut it the F out, Donald. So he was ordered, he was enjoined from continuing to violate the Posse Comitatus Act. But of course, Judge Breyer um, paused his ruling, stayed his ruling for 10 days. So Donald Trump can do what? Run up to the appeals court and try to get them to overturn Judge Breyer's ruling. I don't believe they will. I'm not going to talk about the backstory where they didn't support Judge Breyer's ruling on a preliminary injunction. I believe they will on the substance of this issue because now there's been a trial. Both parties were heard fully, and Donald Trump lost big time, or as he might say, bigly. Good development. And here's the thing, friends. Do we really think Donald Trump will abide by any court order these days? I don't know. He might. He has abided by some. The Trump administration has complied with a number of court orders, including funding some things that they tried to withhold funding for. So it's anybody's guess as to whether he will or will not comply with any given court order, including the one that was just handed down by Judge Breyer in California. But here's the thing. Each time Donald Trump defies a federal court order, he reinforces that he is not a legitimate president. Legitimate presidents respect the authority of a co-equal branch of government and act accordingly. If Donald Trump continues to openly defy these kind of court orders about the authority he does and does not have to deploy the military or to seize control of a state national guard, he will be writing his own political obituary. He will hasten his own political demise. I really believe that. Because if you do not abide by our constitutional construct of government, you're not a legitimate president and you got to go. You got to go. And we're going to have to help hasten him along, his departure, his political demise. He ain't looking too good on the health front either, friends. I mean, he is really looking bad. And he's going to get worse. He's not going to get better on the physical front and on the dementia front, the lack of mental acuity. So the next few months could make a world of difference on the political landscape in America. So we'll stay tuned for that. But this is a good ruling. It's an important ruling. And as I say, if he now sends troops to Chicago, as he's been threatening to do, he will be openly announcing that this is the court opinion, that he will not comply with the law because he doesn't have the authority to do the things he did in California to do them in Chicago. He doesn't have the lawful authority. But if he does them, I swear I believe it's going to hasten his political demise. It's not going to make him stronger to openly violate a law now that there's a definitive court ruling saying you can't do it. Sport. Judge didn't say sport. I call him sport. Um, so that's a good ruling. And here's the other thing you have to indulge me, friends, because I've been a little bit out of the loop for a couple of days, and I've been wanting to do a video about this ever since the news broke, and it broke 2 days ago. And from the perspective of a former career prosecutor, this is uneffing believable. What Jeanine Pirro did to the grand juries in Washington, D.C. You know, let me tell you, I appeared before countless grand juries. I appeared before countless trial juries over my 30 years as a prosecutor. And the one thing I never did was utter one word of disrespect, not one word of disrespect regarding a grand jury or the grand jurors who were serving or a trial jury. Doesn't mean I always agreed with them. I lost cases. I tried a lot of very challenging cases because I wanted to give victims their shot, their day in court, their opportunity to, obtain some modicum of justice. And I lost cases. And after I lost cases, I would go out on the steps of the courthouse, which is the only time we're permitted to speak publicly after a case is over. And I would say we obviously have to respect the jury's opinion. But, we grieve for the victim, or in a murder case, the victim's family. I want to thank the police agencies who worked their tails off trying to bring justice to the victim and the victim's family, trying to protect the community. But first and foremost, we have to respect the jury's verdict. That was even if I didn't agree with them. If I think they got it wrong, and they sometimes did, and sometimes I got it wrong. But grand juries, I mean, you never criticize grand juries publicly. Grand juries play such a vital role in the criminal justice system because they sit as the conscience of the community. They are a check against governmental overreach and abuse and misconduct, prosecutorial overreach, abuse, and misconduct, like Jeanine Pirro is perpetrating in Washington, D.C. right now. And we already talked last week, and this is an update. I'm not going back to the guy who threw the Subway sandwich at the police officer, or the woman who stepped between an ICE agent and an FBI agent and the person they were trying to detain for immigration purposes on a possible deportation. And there was some pushing and shoving. That was another misdemeanor crime. Remember, she presented that case where the woman stepped between the officer and the person they were trying to detain. 3 times she presented it to the grand jury, and the grand jury each time said, no, no, no. We're not indicting that woman for an 8-year felony assault on the police officer because she didn't do that. And so Jeanine Pirro charged that woman with a misdemeanor, which you don't need the grand jury to do. A prosecutor can do that himself or herself. And the Subway sandwich thrower, the grand jury said, no, we're not indicting that person for an 8-year felony crime. He threw a sandwich. The officer wasn't hurt. It's not like he stabbed or punched or kicked or shot the officer. For gosh sakes, go away, Jeanine. You don't know what the hell you're doing. And we're not going to do your dirty bidding for you. I think I did just recap it, even though I think I said I wasn't going to. But here's the new development. Jeanine Pirro went on Fox News, her old stomping ground, because, all the best U.S. attorneys used to be Fox News hosts or Fox Entertainment hosts, right? And the Fox News host was pushing Jeanine Pirro on the fact that she couldn't indict a ham sandwich. She couldn't get felony indictments, even though she tried 4 times in 2 separate cases. And the Fox News host was pushing on her pretty good. Like, what's wrong with you and your office and your practice? You're not really up to the task. Here's what Jeanine Pirro said. Bear with me. I'm going to read a couple of sentences because this is effing infuriating how insulting she is to the grand jurors that are part of the people she is supposed to be serving as U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. So I'm going to read just a couple of sentences from this Daily Beast article talking about Jeanine Pirro's Fox appearance. Pirro, who's a former Fox News host, shot back at the anchor that was pushing her, saying she blamed the jurors, the grand jurors, for failing to grasp the reality of the crime that is occurring because they live in Georgetown or other affluent neighborhoods. First of all, Jeanine Pirro doesn't know what the fuck she's talking about. I lived in those grand juries for decades, practicing before those grand juries. They're not drawn exclusively from Georgetown or affluent neighborhoods. Some are, but they come from the entire spectrum of the citizenry of D.C., all 7 police quadrants, all 4 quadrants of the city. Jeanine Pirro doesn't know what the hell she's talking about. She has no idea. She is so ill-suited and ill-equipped for this job, it's laughable. But she insults the grand jurors. She says they don't understand the reality of the crime that's going on because they live in Georgetown or other affluent neighborhoods. But she gets even more demeaning. Are you ready? She says, quote, "My office has been instructed to move for the highest crime possible, consistent with the law, the statute, and the evidence. And in that one case," now she's talking about the Subway sandwich thrower, "in that one case, we were on point, but the grand jurors don't take it so seriously. They're like, whatever," Pirro said. Well said, Madam U.S. Attorney. It's so insulting. It's so demeaning. It's so disrespectful of the grand juries, but she wasn't done crapping all over the citizens of D.C. who were called for grand jury service. Here's something else she said. Pirro claimed the D.C. residents are, quote, "so used to crime, that crime is so normalized in D.C. that they don't even care about whether or not the law's violated," close quote. You hear what she just said about the people she swore to protect and serve, the communities she's supposed to safeguard, the grand jurors she's supposed to respect? She said that D.C. residents are so used to crime, that crime is so normalized in D.C. that they don't even care about whether or not the law is violated, close quote. That's fucking disgusting. The top prosecutor in Washington, D.C., saying that about the residents of D.C. and about the men and women who are summoned to perform grand jury service, who take an oath to decide the cases, whether to indict or not, in good conscience based on the facts and the law. And they told Jeanine Pirro correctly, throwing a sandwich at a police officer is not an 8-year federal felony, Jeanine. So she shits all over them. She added by saying that this is the quote, this is a quote, "this is the quote, very essence of my problems in D.C. And her plan is to turn this ship around as President Trump has directed." Quote, "the very essence of my problems in D.C. is what Jeanine Pirro says about the citizens she's there to protect and serve, including the grand jurors. This is the very essence of my problems in D.C." Friends, please tell me this upsets and outrages you as much as it does me. And I know that's rhetorical. I know it does. No prosecutor in their right mind has ever said anything like this about grand jurors, that they just don't care about crime. They don't care. And this is my problem in DC is these people in the grand jury. That's my problem here in DC. No, your problem is you have no fucking business being the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, Janine. I mean, really, no business whatsoever. This is disgusting, disrespectful, demeaning. But let's end on a positive note. You know why, friends? Every resident of DC who pays attention to what Janine has been saying, every grand juror, and mind you, we have about 7 or 8 grand juries that are up and running all the time. 5 in Superior Court, I think 3 in Federal District Court. They can cross-pollinate. Superior Court grand juries can return federal charges. Federal grand juries can return DC charges. It's a very unusual system, but a good one. And in my experience, grand jurors get it right. And when they told Janine Pirro, no, 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 4 times, they got it right. Janine got it wrong. So she criticizes them and craps all over them. The very people she's there to protect and serve. That is uneffing believable to me. But you know what? I'll bet all of the jurors serving on these 7 or 8 grand juries that are up and running simultaneously all the time, they've probably been made aware of this. And do you think they're really going to be excited about giving Janine Pirro everything she wants, everything she demands when she's overreaching and asking them to indict things that are not supported by the facts? You think they're going to be on her side? You think they're going to be with her after she says things like this about the grand jurors? Hell no. They're still going to do their jobs in accordance with the oath they took to assess these cases fairly, impartially, independently, and in accordance with the facts and the law. They're going to do their job. But Janine Pirro is going to keep overreaching, and she's going to dig her own hole when it comes to her credibility deeper and deeper and deeper. And her credibility is going to end up being lower than whale shit. And there are few things lower than whale shit. But Janine Pirro will be right down there. All right, everybody. Thank you for bearing with me. I just don't know that I've ever been quite so upset by something a United States attorney, particularly in my former professional home for nearly a quarter of a century, the DC U.S. Attorney's Office. I don't think I've ever been quite so upset at anything a federal prosecutor in that office has said. And boy, she has distinguished herself as being entirely unworthy of the job. I'm sure we're stuck with her, just as we're stuck with Trump until we right this American ship, and we will. And we will. All right, everybody. I have missed about 1,000 messages that you all have been posting, and I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I am agreeing with everything I'm seeing right now as I fly through these messages. All right, everybody. Thank you for jumping on with me tonight. I'll be back tomorrow night for sure, probably around 8:30ish, and we'll see what tomorrow holds in store. Have a good night, friends.